Bill O'Reilly was shocked to find out that pot is legal in Colorado. Earlier this week he was talking about that, and for some reason he linked it very directly to the texting habits of the average American. And specifically he said that we're falling behind China because the Chinese are studying hard in school and we're just sending dick pics and stuff like that. He doesn't say that specifically, but that's what he meant. Now, the next day on The Daily Show, Jon Stewart took him down because he had actual information about what he was talking about. And he cited a study that said, the Chinese do more text messaging than anybody else in the world, perhaps because it is an inexpensive way to communicate and because the Chinese language can squeeze a lot of information into a small space. So Bill O'Reilly postulated something without information. They text less than us, that's why they're smarter. Information is presented to him, but is he going to accept it? No. In fact, he comes back after seeing that episode of The Daily Show, which apparently he obsessively watches in the same way that we do here. And he brought on a China expert, they say. I don't think she's an expert on China, but they brought her on to try to debunk what Jon Stewart said, and it played out like this.
Now the texting thing. Do we have any data about Chinese children texting?
You know, the internet is relatively new to China, and the part of the population that has access to it is much smaller. But we do have data that shows that the Chinese students spend more time on the internet in school. They spend something
no, in school.
Yeah, in school.
Studying. But I'm talking about texting.
The texting,
you know
there's one measure that shows that they text more. There's one measure that shows that U.S. students text more.
They socially?
Yes, because they do have addictions to web surfing, chatting, and those are the things that have people sending them off to camps as they.
I can't imagine it.
You don't have to imagine it. The information has been presented to you by people you don't agree with, like Jon Stewart, and people you ostensibly agree with, like Martha MacCallum. I actually feel a little bit sad for him because you can hear it. Socially, I brought you on here to confirm what I already believe about the world, not to bring in your information from China. And so once again, he goes to bat against Jon Stewart, and once again, he fails. Like, he had a belief, the information is presented to him, goes in, just goes out. He doesn't change his mind. Textbook O'Reilly, textbook stubbornness. He actually has a theory for how this works. Let's hear him tell it.
Tide goes in, tide goes out. Never a miscommunication. You can't explain that. You can explain why the tide goes in.
Tide goes in, tide goes out.
See, the water, the tide comes in and it goes out, Mr. Silverman.
Maybe
it always comes in
on top of Mount Olympus who's making the tides go in and out.
No, but you can't explain that.
And you can't explain why, when presented with very obvious survey information from over 2,000 Chinese young people about their texting habits, he can't accept that, yes, perhaps they're communicating with each other about the same sorts of things that American children are. And I think that there's a very obvious, if you know the right-wing mind, a very obvious reason for that. He cannot accept the similarities and differences between American children and Chinese children because to him, they're not the same sort of thing. They are a foreign other that lives across the world, that maybe he once went to Beijing for a weekend or something like that, probably got like a hand job or something. That's just my speculation. And he thinks that he knows them, but they can't be the same. He has to deny it because he sees them as a robotic other. He doesn't see them as having the same sorts of day-to-day gossip and just wanting to send pictures to each other and talking about cats and sharing BuzzFeed articles. The same sorts of things that our young people do, apparently Chinese young people are doing, but to him they have to be different because they're from another country, they speak a different language, and they sure look different than us, to O'Reilly. And at the same time, the differences between us, he celebrates for a very odd reason. He said in his original thing that no, they can't be texting in the same way. That has to explain the difference. They lead these regimented lives. They spend all their time on schoolwork because the government and their family requires it. That's the differences between American and Chinese students. And for some reason he celebrates it, although he seems to be saying that the best thing about China is that they deny children freedom. Supposedly a right-winger, he's supposed to like freedom in America, but he doesn't like it when it applies to our children in the way that he thinks that it already doesn't apply to Chinese children. Now, it turns out it's not actually true, but don't expect that he's going to change his mind. Now, we've told you before on the program about research showing that when someone believes something, if you show them information that proves that that is not the case, in many cases, rather than reevaluating their preconceived notions and changing it based on the new information, they will in fact double down and believe, just like in that video Bill O'Reilly did, believe even more strongly in what they previously believed. And we know this is true from research that dates back decades, but very rarely do we get to see it played out in real time on the news. Bill O'Reilly showing there that despite the fact that in a way that is true about very few Americans. He is forced every day to stay up to date on what's going on. He has information presented to him every day. Despite that, he learns nothing. He doesn't evolve. Evolution apparently not true when it comes to the hosts of Fox News.